Good morning, everyone. Everyone is here, and we just received the message that we can get started. So let's call the case of Marks versus Sunny's Rooftop Bar. My name is Judge Falkenstein. I just ask that all scoring judges please make sure to leave your video and audio muted throughout the round. These should remain off until the end of the rounds. You should also have your video set to hide all non-video participants. This means that the only people on the screen you should see right now should be me and the advocates once they come on. Are the attorneys ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Great, let's hear appearances.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Christine Guarnieri. Today, I represent the plaintiff, Ethel Marks. I am joined by my co-counsel, Ahil Paloth, who will mostly remain off screen and will be dealing with the technology side of things today.
Good morning.
My name is Annie Zhang, and I represent the defendant, Sunny's Rooftop Bar. I am joined by my second chair, Nancy Remmer.
Morning.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Or good afternoon, wherever you might be. Do we have any pretrial matters to take care of?
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's hear from plaintiff first.
Yes, Your Honor. We would like to ask your preference when it comes to screen sharing demonstratives. Would you like us to ask for permission or let the record reflect we're doing so?
As if it's already in evidence, you can just let the record reflect. If it's a demonstrative that you've made yourself, ask permission just so we have an idea of what's about to happen. But if something's in evidence already, feel free to put it up when you want.
Yes, Your Honor. And when it comes to bringing up exhibits for identification, would you like us to ask for permission to do that as well, or let the record reflect what exhibit we're showing the witness?
So as far as exhibits, when you're laying the foundation to get them into evidence, I believe that all the witnesses should have a copy of the exhibits. So don't put anything on screen until it's in evidence. Just say, identify what exhibit you're asking the witness to look at, direct them to that exhibit. And then once the foundation has been laid and it's been admitted, then feel free to screen share it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sure. Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. When it comes to objections, would you like us to object and then state the basis, or object and wait to be acknowledged before explaining our objection?
Whatever you feel is best. That's your call.
Yes, Your Honor. We would like to ask the court to note that pursuant to Rule 615, witnesses are considered sequestered aside from the party representative for the defendant.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else?
With that, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Any pretrial matters from defense?
Yes, Your Honor. One thing. The defense designates Sony Mehta as the party representative, and he will be present throughout the trial.
Sounds good. Okay, are we ready to move on, or is there any other pretrial matters we should take care of?
With that, the defense is also ready to proceed.
Okay, let's hear opening statements. And at this time, everyone should make sure they're in speaker view, all judges watching. And that button is in the upper right part of your screen. Attorneys, please remember to mute your audio when the other attorney is speaking.
Yes, Your Honor. Her life stopped because the defendant never stopped serving. On the night of March 24th, 2019, Jessica Marks lost her life because the defendant never stopped serving her drinks. On that night, Jessica Marks and Morgan Levin went to Sunny's Rooftop Bar. The defendant. Both were 19, both were served drinks by Sunny Mehta and Frankfurt Johnson. A bottle of wine and 7 other drinks within the span of 3 hours. Jessica Marks was 5 feet tall, and after all those drinks, she was starting to show it. She was displaying signs of how those drinks were affecting her, and yet the defendant never stopped serving. When Jessica's eyes were bloodshot, they served her more. When she was slurring her speech, they served her more. When she was falling down the stairs, they served her more. The result? When Jessica Marks left the bar, her car crashed into a ravine because of all of the alcohol the defendant had served her while she was intoxicated. That's why we're here today. Members of the jury, my name is Christine Guarnieri. I'm here on behalf of the plaintiff, Ethel Marks, Jessica's mother. Today, we're bringing forward a wrongful death claim under the Dram Shop Act to hold the defendant liable for Jessica's wrongful death. And to do that, today we're going to establish 3 elements by a preponderance of the evidence. First, we're going to show you that Jessica Marks was under the age of 21. Second, we're going to show you that Jessica Marks was obviously intoxicated and the reasonable person would have seen it. And third, we're going to show you that alcohol was a substantial factor in her death. Today, we're going to show you all 3 elements by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not. Well, today, 2 of these won't be in dispute, that she was under 21 and that alcohol was a substantial factor. So I want to focus on that second one, obviously intoxicated. Now today, we're going to call Morgan Levin to the stand. She's going to tell you how Jessica was acting that night in front of the patrons, in front of the bartenders. And then she's going to show you how she was acting. I'm showing you a video she took. And then she's going to tell you what the defendant said. We may need to cut this one off. So what did they do? Surely they stopped serving? No. They gave her another drink. I want to be clear, today we don't have to show you that Sunny Mehta knew she was intoxicated, just that the reasonable person would have. And today, we will meet our burden of proof. It's why when I come before you at the end of this trial, I'm going to ask you come to the only conclusion supported by the evidence and find Sunny's rooftop bar liable because Jessica's life stopped because they didn't stop serving. Thank you.
Thank you. Opening from defense.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Go big or go home. That is what Miss Jessica Marks did on March 24th. Her life stopped after going big. Today, a defense is not here to argue whether Miss Marks' death is tragic or not. It is. Today, we are here to take a step back and understand what led to Miss Marks' car wreck. The plaintiff needs to prove by a preponderance of evidence that my client kept serving Miss Marks alcohol after she was intoxicated. The evidence will show that they can't meet this burden. This is why we have raised an affirmative defense. As difficult as it may be for you, members of the jury, the defense asks you to look at Miss Marks' actions that led to the accident and see it was caused by her own decisions. And on the night of the accident, Miss Marks got in her car after drinking a few glasses of wine. She turned on ignition and drove from Brentwood all the way to Malibu. She went to Sunny's bar and ordered drinks. Mr. Mehta, the owner of Sunny's rooftop bar, complied with the orders after ensuring Miss Marks displayed no signs of intoxication. The defense, the defense asks you to look at 3 actions. First, Ms. Marks did not act with reasonable care to herself even before going to Sunny's. You'll hear from Ms. Levin that Ms. Marks used her fake ID 8 times before the night of the accident. Ms. Marks used her fake ID 8 times to get alcohol. 8 times to get alcohol in less than 1 week. In addition, Ms. Marks already had a few drinks before stepping foot into Sunny's. Second, Ms. Marks was not obviously intoxicated at Sunny's. Mr. Mehta, the only witness who had not been drinking that night, will tell you that Ms. Marks' speech sounds normal, her eyes look normal, and her actions were coordinated. Third, Ms. Marks left the bar and acted irresponsibly. You see, when it's time to leave, Ms. Marks did not feel comfortable getting into the car with Ms. Marks. Ms. Levin begged Ms. Marks to choose the safe option and take the Uber. The members of the jury, what did Ms. Marks say? She replied that she had gotten pretty good at driving after a big night. At the end of today's trial, find my client, Sunny's Rooftop Bar, not liable.
Thank you. Is plaintiff ready to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Ms. Morgan Levin to the stand.
Thank you. And I just ask that everyone switch to gallery view at this time. That's the buttons in the upper right of your screen. This way you'll be able to see all the attorneys and witnesses. Whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name's Morgan Levin. I turned 21 back in January, and I'm a student at UCLA.
Ms. Levin, did you know Jessica Marks?
I did. We were really close friends all the way back from junior high, and we used to do everything together.
Ms. Levin, when was the last time you saw Jessica Marks?
Never be able to forget it. The last time I saw her was March 24th, 2019.
Where were you two that night?
We were at Jessica's Airbnb, and then we went to Sunny's Rooftop Bar.
I want to focus on the second place you mentioned, Sunny's Rooftop Bar. About what time did you get there?
We got there around 9 p.m.
And how old were you two that night?
We were both 19. We have the same birthday.
Said you got there at around 9 p.m. What did you do first?
Well, we went up to the rooftop and we ordered some drinks.
Did you take any pictures of those drinks?
I did. I wanted to write a Yelp review, but obviously some bigger things happened that night.
Would you recognize these pictures in court today?
I do.
You could refer to your evidence booklet of exhibits 11 through 16. Are these those pictures you took?
Yes, they look exactly the same.
Your Honor, we move exhibits 11 through 16 into evidence at this time.
Any objection?
Without objections.
They're admitted.
Mr. Paloth, if we could put those 6 images up on the screen. Ms. Levin, are these those pictures you were talking about?
Yes, they are.
Mr. Paloth, I want to focus on exhibits 11, 14, and 16. Your Honor, permission to use these 3 images in a demonstrative aid.
Any objection?
None at this point.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to talk about what Jessica drank that night. Starting with the first picture, can you tell me what she was holding in that picture?
In this picture, Jessica's holding a glass of wine.
How many glasses did she drink that night?
She had 3 glasses.
I want to move on to that second picture. Which of those drinks were Jessica's?
Well, one of the beers was hers, as was the White Claw seltzers. I think there's 2 of them in this picture. And that other drink with the red straw, I don't know what it was.
Let's just get those 3 you do know on the screen. Then I want to finally talk about that last picture. What drinks were hers?
Well, you can see there's another of the White Claw seltzers, and she also had a green tea shot.
Ms. Levin, does this accurately reflect what you remember Jessica drinking that night?
That's exactly what's on the screen, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Ploth, you can take that down now. Now, I want to talk about how she was acting after she had those drinks. Could you describe her behavior?
Well, she seemed pretty obviously drunk in my perspective. She was pretty loud, she was slurring her words. Remember, she didn't make much sense, and her eyes were bloodshot and watery. She was definitely losing control over coordination too. She stumbled a couple times.
I want to focus on what you said with slurred words. Did you take any videos of her that night?
I did. I took one video for her social media at around 11 p.m.
If you could flip to Exhibit 10 in your evidence booklet, it should be a freeze frame of that video. Could you identify it?
Yes, this looks like exactly what the video looks like.
Your Honor, we move Exhibit 10 into evidence.
Any objection?
None at this point.
It's in.
Mr. Ploth, if we could get that up on the screen and play it for the court.
Hi everyone, Morgan and I are in Hollywood. We're at a bar. It's kind of like a Philly bar, except everything is really, really expensive. $10 for a seltzer. And everyone here wants to be a model or an actress. I'd like to thank the Academy. Mom and Dad, you've inspired me. Okay, well, go big or go home.
Was she acting like that in front of the bartenders, Miss Levin?
Absolutely. I mean, they came to our table 8 to 10 times that night, and Jessica was showing these symptoms the whole time.
You mentioned earlier that she stumbled. Could you explain what you mean?
Well, at one point, Jessica and I were coming back from the bathroom, and I remembered she stumbled really suddenly, and she would have fallen if one of the servers hadn't caught her.
Do you know who this server was?
Yeah, it was Sunny. And after Jessica fell, Sunny said maybe we should cut this one off. I still remember it very clearly.
At that time, did she cut you two off?
No, she didn't.
What happened when you guys left the bar?
Well, we both left separately. She was in her car and I was in my Uber. We were going down the highway for a second. Then all of a sudden, her car just went all the way across the highway and off the road, and it flipped over. And I never saw Jessica after that.
Ms. Levin, I want to go back to what happened at the bar for another minute. You said she didn't get cut off at that time. At any point, did Sunny Mehta stop serving Jessica?
No, Sunny never cut Jessica off.
Did Frankfurt Johnson ever stop serving her?
No, that never happened.
On that night, did anyone ever stop serving Jessica Marks after she was behaving the way you mentioned?
No, not at all. That never happened.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good morning, Miss Levin. I know this is hard for you. You ever need a moment, just let me know, all right?
Okay.
Now, let's start with before the accident. Your Honor, permission to put up a demonstrative of the visual representation of the testimony we're about to elicit?
Any objection?
No objections at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead.
You saw Jessica use her fake ID before March 24th, 2019, right?
I did.
Now let's talk about all these times she used her fake ID. She used it for beer on Monday at Westwood, right?
Objection.
Or sorry, what grounds?
Under Rule 403, relevance.
Okay, response, defense?
Your Honor, this is relevant as it shows Ms. Marks' actions throughout the week.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Foundation.
Before we get into this, plaintiff, are you objecting under 403 or just relevance under 401?
Right now, relevance under 401, because we don't know what opposing counsel's using it for. We acknowledge it is, we are objecting under 401 at this time, but may amend it to 403 depending on what they claim its use.
Your objection's relevance because you don't know what the demonstrative's being used for?
What they're using the testimony for, Your Honor, right now, they're bringing up what she used her ID for in the past week. And the case today is simply about whether or not she was showing those signs of intoxication to what a reasonable person would see. And right now we see it as a 401 objection.
Okay, defense, how is her past use of her fake ID relevant?
Your Honor, I'm laying foundation as to Ms. Marks' behavior throughout the week she was in LA.
Your Honor,
Okay. I think we're good. Overruled. If you think that it continues into a place that you believe continues to be irrelevant, feel free to re-raise the objection. But right now, overruled and you may proceed.
You saw Ms. Marks use her fake ID for beer on Monday, right?
I did, yes.
She used it for Toby's tap on Tuesday, right?
That sounds correct.
Wine at California Adventure on Wednesday, right?
That sounds correct as well.
Martinez on the same day?
Yes, I remember her doing that.
A wine bar on Friday?
That's also correct, yes.
And beer hopping at 3 places on Saturday?
Yes, I was with her for all of those times.
So that is 8 times Ms. Marks used her fake ID in a week, right?
I believe that's the case, yes.
And none of these 8 places refused to serve her?
objection.
Grounds?
Under Rule 401, relevance, and additionally under Rule 403, misleading to the jury.
Okay, feel free to explain that further.
Yes, Your Honor. First, to address 401, whether or not other restaurants didn't serve Jessica doesn't have any bearing on what Sunny's Rooftop Bar did that night. Furthermore, Your Honor, under Rule 403, it's misleading to the jury because no part of today's case requires that we establish an element about her fake ID. All we have to establish is that Jessica was under age 21, and that's been stipulated too. Therefore, it's misleading to the jury because it could raise the burden of what the plaintiff has to prove today and could mislead them to think that we've missed our burden because we didn't focus on fake IDs when that's not a part of today's claim.
Okay, response.
We do not disagree with plaintiff's definition on the burden. We're simply laying foundation as to Ms. Marks' behavior.
Okay, I think plaintiff's concern is that if we focus too much on what other bars thought about this fake ID, the jury's going to kind of be confused with the issues, and I understand that. So I'm going to sustain it as to what other restaurants did and whether they served her or not, and focus just on Sunny's Rooftop Bar.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now let's talk more about Ms. Marks. You saw 2 wine bottles when you arrived at her Airbnb, right?
I did.
One was empty?
Yes, it was.
and the other was half empty.
That sounds correct.
Now you and Jessica decide to have a few drinks before going to Sunny's.
Yes, I had a glass of wine and she had one or maybe two.
And after having these alcoholic drinks, Jess decided to get in the driver's seat.
She did. She didn't seem intoxicated at all, so I thought it was fine.
All right. And after having these alcohol, she drove 19 miles from Brentwood to Malibu.
That sounds like the right distance, yes.
Now let's talk about what happened at Sunny's. You and Jessica started ordering.
We did.
From Sunny and Frankfurt?
That sounds correct, yes.
You yourself were drinking.
I was. It was a bar.
That's right. You had some wine.
I did. I had a glass or so.
A beer?
I did have a beer, yes.
And a hard liquor shot.
Yes, it was a green tea shot.
Now let's move on to what happened after you left Sunny's. You don't feel safe driving with Miss Marks.
No, I didn't. Jessica seemed pretty obviously drunk to me.
And did you say you said that to her?
I did. I tried to get her to come with me.
Miss Marks responded that she was fine.
Yes, that's what she said.
She said she had gotten pretty good at driving after a big night.
Objection.
Grounds?
Under Rule 801, hearsay, and under Rule 404, improper character evidence.
Okay, please explain the hearsay and then the character evidence.
Yes, Your Honor. Opposing counsel is bringing in an out-of-court statement that Ms. Marks said for the truth of the matter asserted.
And that's the statement that she's gotten pretty good at driving. Can you repeat what you said, Miss Levin? What was the statement?
Your Honor, I believe the statement was that Jessica had become pretty good at driving after a big night.
Okay. So before we get into the character evidence, defense, what's your response to that being a hearsay statement?
The witness is unavailable, so which is a hearsay exception under 803.
Your Honor, may I respond to that?
You may.
While a witness being unavailable under Rule 804 opens up more exceptions, it's not an umbrella exception. Once a witness meets the criteria to be unavailable, there's a new list of exceptions that that witness can qualify under. Simply being unavailable doesn't allow all of their testimony into court.
Okay, understood. Defense, are you offering the statement for the truth that she was in fact getting good at driving after a few drinks, or are you offering it for another purpose?
I'm offering it for the truth.
Okay, and under 803, does it fall under one of those exceptions beyond the unavailability? We understand she's stipulated unavailable.
Your Honor, the decedent is unavailable. The defendant is deceased. Therefore, it is the defense's position that it falls under 804.
Okay. Plaintiff, can you point out what part of 804 that you're concerned with that this doesn't fall under?
Well, yes, Your Honor, we agree that she is unavailable. However, the exceptions under 804B, opposing counsel hasn't given one that it falls under, and that's where our area of concern is, because 804A as a whole, it's not an exception. Once 804A unavailable is established, they have to meet a qualification under 804B, and that's where our objection lies.
Understood. Now, defense, does this statement fall under any of those 804B exceptions? I believe it's former testimony, statement under the belief of imminent death. Any of these exceptions do you believe it falls under? Ms. Zhang?
Your Honor,
Do you rest on your former argument that she's unavailable and therefore it should be admitted?
may I have a moment to collect my thoughts?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, I false on my response that the witness is unavailable, and in addition, it is an excited utterance that is given in a moment.
Okay, response to the excited utterance exception.
Yes, Your Honor. For the excited utterance exception, that's saying that there was something that triggered the statement that made her exclaim something. However, saying I've gotten good at driving on the big night is not an excited utterance. It's saying what she thinks she's capable of. There was no startling event that made her exclaim that. Therefore, it doesn't fall under that exception.
Understood. Okay, given that this is being offered for the truth, and I also agree with plaintiff that it hasn't met the excited utterance exception or one of the unavailability exceptions, I'm going to sustain it, the objection.
Your Honor, motion to strike it from the record.
Granted.
Now, after you asked Miss Marks to come in the Uber with you, she gave herself a sobriety test.
She did, and she actually didn't look that bad.
Objection under Rule 401 relevance and 403 misleading.
Explain the 403.
Yes, Your Honor. The claim we brought forth is that Jessica Marks was served alcohol when she was obviously intoxicated. Establishing what she was like after she left the bar when she wasn't served alcohol anymore could be misleading to the jury to believe that that's what she was acting like when she was still being served alcohol, when that's not the case. Since
A
the
response?
time,
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Your Honor, I was just going to say, since the timing is after she was served anymore, it could be misleading to the jury, and it's also why we believe it falls under Rule 401.
A response.
Miss Marks was served right before she left the bar. Therefore, her state in the parking lot in which this statement is set at would be relevant, and it would not be misleading as towards the state she is at the bar.
Okay.
And in addition,
overruled. You're good. Overruled.
Exactly, Miss Levin. Miss Marks wasn't as drunk as you expected.
I mean, she wasn't sober by anyone's standards, but she wasn't fall down drunk either.
But you still begged her to take the Uber with you.
I asked her to come with me, and she said no.
Miss Marks said, I'm fine again.
She did.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Levin, I want to talk about how Jessica Marks was acting when she was inside the bar. Could you explain what you saw?
I saw a lot of signs of intoxication. I remember Jessica was slurring her words. She didn't make sense. She was talking really loudly. She had red, bloodshot, and watery eyes. And she generally looked pretty drunk to me.
Did she appear like that in front of the bartenders?
Absolutely. She stumbled into Sunny one time, and based on the fact that she was looking drunk the whole night, I'm sure they saw her.
This falls under the scope of my cross.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. During their cross-examination, they questioned the witness about what happened when they were inside the bar, what she drank, what was served. Therefore, we're just talking about what was going on around that time, opposing counsel mentioned.
Overruled.
Oh. Ms. Levin, after she was acting like that, was she served more drinks?
She was.
Before the two of you left, was she ever stopped being served?
No, no one at the bar ever stopped serving.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Does plaintiff have any other witnesses? And Ms. Levin, you may step off the stand. Thank you. Anything else from the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor. At this time, the plaintiff rests its case in chief.
Great. Defense, you may call your first witness.
The defense calls Sunny Mehta to the stand.
Ms. Mehta, you've been constructively sworn in. You may
Please
proceed.
introduce yourself to the jury.
Afternoon or morning for some of you, I guess. I'm Sunny Mehta.
What do you do for a living, Ms. Mehta?
Well, right now I'm actually still looking for work, but I used to own Sunny's Rooftop Bar. Surprisingly, I named it after my dad, not me.
Why are you here today?
So they're saying I kept serving this woman that came into my bar, Jessica Marks, even though she was too drunk. You know, she was underage and she passed away after she left my bar.
Does Sunny's have any preventative actions to prevent tragedies like this?
Absolutely, we do. So we teach everyone on staff, including myself, to card anyone that looks like they're under 45, just to stay on the safe side. And, you know, we serve alcohol in California. So everybody is required to take a state-approved course on how to recognize if someone might be intoxicated.
How can you tell if someone is intoxicated?
Well, when I took the course, they gave us a whole bunch of symptoms to look out for. I know them from common sense too. So, you know, I'll talk to customers. I'll look at how they're walking, how they're talking, you know, that kind of thing. I try to keep an eye on everyone who comes into my bar.
What are some symptoms you look for?
The big ones are, you know, red, watery eyes, slurred speech, if the customer isn't really making too much sense. Some other major ones that I look out for are loss of balance and how coordinated they are, you know, their motor skills. So I watch everyone walking down the stairs when they leave the bar to see if, you know, they can make it down the stairs okay, if they're stumbling when they're walking out, that sort of thing.
Have you ever served someone who was displaying these signs?
Absolutely not. No, I would not serve anyone that came into my bar if they displayed those symptoms at any time.
Now, I would like to talk specifically about Ms. Marks and Ms. Levin. How many times did you visit your table on the night of March 24th?
Well, I was serving that night. They were up on the rooftop. I took their order. I brought them drinks. So I'd say 8 to 10 times, give or take.
And did you see any of these symptoms on Ms. Marks or Ms. Levin?
I never saw Ms. Marks, Jessica. I never saw Jessica with any of those symptoms. Her friend Morgan Levin, she definitely looked a little buzzed to me.
Let's talk about Ms. Levin first. What made you say Ms. Levin was buzzed?
Well, when I spoke to her, she looked like she was getting a little sleepier throughout the night. Her eyes were definitely a little bit bloodshot. She tripped over her words a couple times as well.
Does she appear drunk?
I mean, I wouldn't say super drunk, no, but yeah, definitely buzzed. Like she'd had a little bit to drink.
Let's talk about Ms. Marks. Did you see Ms. Marks clearly?
Yeah, you know, I went up to her table. I talked to her, looked her in the eye.
Your Honor, permission to put up a demonstrative of the visual representation that we're about to elicit?
You may, as long as there's no objection.
No objection at this time, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Now let's talk about Ms. Marks. Was she coordinated?
Yeah, to me, she definitely looked that way.
Did you make eye contact with Ms. Marks during your visits?
I did, yes.
What were her eyes like during those visits?
They looked perfectly normal to me, perfectly fine. I like to look in customers' eyes to make sure they're not bloodshot, and hers weren't. They weren't red, they weren't watering, they looked focused.
Did you hear what Ms. Marks sounded like when she placed her first order?
I did, yeah, I spoke to her.
Did you hear Ms. Marks throughout the night?
I did, yes. Every time she ordered something, when I went up to her table, I had a little conversation.
How would you describe Ms. Marks' speech over your visits?
She sounded normal. She sounded sober. She wasn't slurring her words. She wasn't stumbling over them. She didn't sound super loud. What she was saying made sense every time I spoke to her.
Your Honor, I ask that the record reflect we are placing 3X indicating Ms. Mehta did not see Ms. Mark displaying those symptoms.
The record will reflect that.
Now, how would you describe Ms. Mark's state over your visits?
Well, the last time I talked to her, she seemed the same as the first time I talked to her. Sometimes we have customers that come in and they look like they're getting more drunk throughout the night. That wasn't the case with Jessica.
How do you remember Ms. Mark so well?
I pay attention to all my customers, and if they display those kinds of symptoms, I cut them off right away if they seem, drunk.
Did you see Ms. Marks and Ms. Levin as they were leaving?
I did, yes.
Where were you?
Well, I was behind the bar. It's where we mix the drinks, and I spent some time down there that night. And they were walking down the stairs, and when customers are leaving, I keep an eye on them to make sure they can get down the stairs okay, make sure they're not stumbling, see if they're okay to drive.
How did Ms. Marks look when she walked down the stairs?
She looked perfectly fine. She looked like she did when she walked in. She didn't stumble on the steps like some customers do. She looked fine when she walked past me. She said goodnight to the other bartender, and her voice sounded normal, sober.
And you were here this entire trial, and Ms. Levin said that you said we might need to cut this one off. Did this ever happen?
No, I never said anything like that.
Did you offer to call Ms. Marks an Uber?
I didn't. No, like I said, she looked perfectly sober when she left.
Thank you. Nothing further at this time.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Mehta, I want to start by talking about something that happened at your bar in 2018. Your Honor, permission from my co-counsel to put Exhibit 1 up on the screen. It was pre-admitted and has been stipulated that it can be used at any time in trial.
Sure, go ahead.
Now, Ms. Mehta, this was a citation that your bar received in 2018, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
It was less than a year before Jessica and Morgan went to your bar?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Oh, in this plea agreement, your bar pled guilty to serving alcohol to people under the age of 21.
We did, yes.
Specifically, it was the bartender Frankfurt Johnson who pled guilty.
Yes.
It was the same Frankfurt Johnson who was serving Morgan and Jessica that night?
It was, that's right.
And as a part of this agreement, your bar said that they would purchase ID scanners, correct?
Yes, we did say that, and we did purchase them.
You said you'd use them on anyone believed to be under the age of 35, correct?
That's right.
On the night of March 24th, 2019, you didn't use that scanner on Morgan Levin's ID.
They were broken that night, so no, we didn't use them.
You checked these IDs by hand, correct?
That's right, yes.
In your deposition, you were shown Morgan and Jessica's fake IDs, correct?
I was.
You identified them as fakes in 1 or 2 seconds, correct?
I did, that's right.
I want to switch over to what happened on the night of March 24th, 2019. As you said earlier, you were the one serving their table upstairs, correct?
Yeah, I was the only one waiting tables that day. So I went up to take their orders, serve them drinks, that kind of thing.
You were also the one who brought them their receipt at the end of the night.
I was.
And if you could flip to Exhibit 17 in your evidence booklet, this is that receipt, correct?
Yes, it is.
It's a fair and accurate depiction of the receipt?
It looks like it, yes.
Your Honor, we move Exhibit 17 into evidence redacting the statements by Morgan Levin as they fall under 801.
Any objection?
No objections.
It's in.
Mr. Palat, if we could get that redacted version up on the screen. Now, putting aside the chips and guac and looking at the drinks, they're all alcoholic, correct?
Yes, they are.
They were all served within around 3 hours, correct?
They walked in at 8. Yes, that's right.
Now, you said on direct examination that Jessica appeared the same when she entered the bar as when she left the bar, correct?
She did. That's right.
After all those drinks, you didn't notice a single change in her behavior, is that right?
No, I never noticed her acting different than when she first got there.
You said she appeared sober most of the night, correct?
She did.
I want to talk about when that wasn't the case. On the night of March 24th, 2019, you were interviewed by Officer Gaskins, correct?
I was. They came to my bar the next day to ask me a couple questions.
They were specifically questioning you about Jessica Marks.
They were. That's right.
This was before this lawsuit had been brought up,
It was.
before you'd spoken with your attorneys.
That's right.
You said that Jessica looked like a buzzed girl to Officer Gaskins, correct?
Yeah. I think I told them that she was buzzed. I knew she'd had a couple drinks, but she looked fine to me on her way out.
I just want to be clear, buzzed, that's different than sober, correct?
That's right. I told them that she was buzzed because I knew she'd had a couple drinks. I knew I'd serve them. But, you know, she did look fine to me when she left. So that's why I didn't say anything more.
Well, you also said that she seemed like a typical buzzed girl, not just that she was buzzed, correct?
I'm sorry. I don't think that's right. I said that she was.
Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to pull up Exhibit 23.
For what purposes?
To pull up what Ms. Mehta said to the police officers. Exhibit 23 has already been admitted into evidence, Your Honor.
Okay, if it's in evidence, feel free to put it in.
Now, if you could zoom into that last paragraph, it says that Jessica Marks was a typical buzzed girl. Isn't that right?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Poloff. You can take that down. I want to go through what drinks Jessica Marks was served on that night. Your Honor, permission for Mr. Poloff to put up a timeline of exhibits 10 through 16.
And these are those photos that were admitted into evidence previously?
Yes, Your Honor, and the video of exhibit 10 with its posted time on social media.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, Ms. Mehta, this looks like the correct order from the exhibits you were shown.
Yeah, looks like it.
Mr. Poloff, I want to focus in on those last 3 pictures. Now, you were the one who was clearing the tables upstairs, correct?
I was.
You were the only one doing that?
Yep, just me.
Oh, exhibit 15, there's chips and guac on the table.
Yes, there are.
Exhibit 10, there's chips and guac.
There are. That's right.
And those chips and guac, they were cleared before exhibit 16.
Yeah, looks like that from the photos.
You said you never saw Jessica Marks acting the way she was in that video, correct?
That's right. I didn't.
You would agree with me that that video on the minimum was within 10 or 15 minutes of when you were up there?
I'm not sure exactly when I went to their table, but I suppose it's possible.
Thank you.
Objection. This asks my witness to speculate.
I overruled. The witness was able to clear that up. It's about when she went there, so overruled.
Mr. Ploth, you can take that down. I want to talk about one last thing, how we know she was intoxicated. You're familiar with something called blood alcohol concentration, correct?
Objection. Attorney testifying when she mentions how we know she is intoxicated.
Overruled. It's cross.
Ms. Mehta, you're familiar with blood alcohol concentration?
I am, yes.
It's also known as BAC, correct?
That's right.
You're aware that the legal limit for someone over 21 is 0.08.
That's right.
For someone under 21, it's 0.01.
That's correct.
Now, by definition, someone with a blood alcohol concentration of 0.16 is intoxicated, correct?
That's true.
You're aware that Jessica Marks had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.16 that night.
I am.
That's 16 times the legal limit for someone her age, correct?
It's twice the, oh, yes, it is. Excuse me.
Oh, 16 times the legal limit, and you're saying you never saw her display a sign of intoxication, is that right?
Everyone shows it differently. I mean, I don't know what to say. She looked sober walking into my bar. She looked sober walking out.
So that's a yes?
That's a yes.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. On cross, you were asked about Miss Marks being buzzed. Is there a line between being buzzed and being drunk?
Yeah, there is. You know, like I said earlier, I told the police that she was buzzed because I knew she'd ordered a couple drinks. I knew she'd probably drank some of them. But when someone's buzzed, when they've had a couple drinks, they don't always look that way leaving the bar. So she looked fine walking out, and that's why I told the police that she was buzzed.
And you were here this entire trial. Did you know on March 24th that Miss Marks had been drinking before going to your bar?
No, I didn't.
Objection outside the scope of cross-examination.
Overruled. Give some leeway.
I didn't know she'd been drinking before. No.
And did Miss Marks appear different when she went in your bar to when she came out?
No, like I said, I keep an eye on people walking out. You know, her friend Morgan was stumbling a little, so that did concern me. But, you know, Jessica looked perfectly fine, perfectly sober.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Ms. Mehta, you may step down.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Anything else from defense?
The defense rests our case.
Great. Are we ready to move on to closings, or do you guys want a few minutes?
Your Honor, may I have just one moment to set up my camera?
Absolutely. Let's take a brief break, and it looks on my end it's 12:56, so let's meet back here at 1, whatever time
Yes.
that might be wherever you are.
Your Honor. Her life stopped because the defendant never stopped serving. On the night of March 24th, 2019, Jessica Marks received drinks the entire time she was at Sunny's rooftop bar. She received 1, 2, 3 glasses of wine, a beer, a shot, and 1, 2, 3 hard seltzers, all served to Jessica Marks by Sunny Mehta. All served within 3 hours. And yet, Ms. Mehta wants you to believe that she didn't appear different at all. Not a single difference after all of those drinks. Members of the jury, that's not the case. Today, Ms. Levin told you about the signs Ms. Marks was displaying of intoxication, that she was displaying those signs throughout the night, that it got worse as the night went on until she left. And her car crashed into a ravine, killing her because of all of the drinks she'd been served. That's why we brought forth our wrongful death claim under the Dram Shop Act. At the beginning of this trial, I told you that I'd show you these 3 elements by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not. And today, that's what we did. First, we showed you that Jessica was under 21. That wasn't in question. Second, we showed you that Jessica Marks was obviously intoxicated and that a reasonable person would have seen it. Today, Ms. Levin, she told you how Jessica was acting that night, and I want to look at that on a list. Slurred speech, loud, lack of coordination, and bloodshot eyes. Those were the same signs of intoxication that Ms. Mehta explained to you. Those are the same signs of intoxication you're going to be asked to see if the reasonable person would have seen. Third, and finally, we had to show you that alcohol was a substantial factor in Jessica's death. And today, that's not in question. So I want to focus on how we showed you that Jessica Marks was obviously intoxicated. We brought Morgan Levin to the stand. She told you about all the drinks Jessica was given by Sonny Mehta. She told you how Jessica Marks was acting that night, and then she showed you. You got to watch a video of how Jessica Marks was acting to see for yourself if she was displaying signs of intoxication. Because members of the jury, we're not here today to determine if Sonny Mehta knew Jessica was drunk. She can deny it as many times as she wants. That's not why we're here today. The claim is that a reasonable person would have seen the signs. And that's exactly what you can see in Exhibit 10. Members of the jury, of course, Ms. Mehta's going to deny seeing the signs. The minute she does, we don't need to be here. Case closed, they're liable. Of course, she's going to deny that she said we may need to cut this one off because they never did. The minute she admits to all of the mistakes they made that night, they're instantly liable. And she'll lose even more. Today, the evidence has shown that Jessica Marks's life stopped because the defendant never stopped serving. It's why we ask you find Sonny's Rooftop Bar liable for Jessica's wrongful death. Thank you.
Closing from defense.
Your Honor, may I reserve the remaining time for a rebuttal?
You may.
May I proceed?
You may.
Go big or go home.
Ms. Zhang, I don't mean to cut you off, but I don't believe you're on camera.
Your Honor, it shows that my video is on.
Oh, you're back. I think it was covered.
My apologies.
No problem.
Go big or go home. That's what Miss Marks said to her best friend, Miss Levin. Go big or go home. That's what Miss Marks said in her video. Go big or go home. That's exactly what Miss Marks did. She went big, and that's why her life stopped. Let's take a look at Miss Marks' decisions. The reason we're here today. First, you heard that Miss Marks decided to be reckless even before going to Sonny's. Miss Levin told you all the drinks Miss Marks was served. And she also told you all the drinks she had before going to Sonny's. Miss Levin admitted that even before March 24th, Miss Marks used her fake ID 8 times to get alcohol. And that is not counting Miss Marks pulling out her fake ID again and buying the 2 bottles of wine that sits on her Airbnb's table. When Miss Levin arrived at the Airbnb on March 24th, 1.5 bottle was already empty. So Miss Marks poured herself a glass of wine, and after downing the alcohol, she got in the driver's seat she turned on ignition and drove from Brentwood all the way to Malibu to Sunny's bar. Second, at Sunny's bar, Miss Marks decided to use her fake ID again and order. Today, you heard from two witnesses, Miss Levin and Miss Mehta. Miss Levin told you that Miss Marks was intoxicated, that Miss Marks was drunk. But members of the jury, how can Miss Levin be so certain when she herself was also drinking that night? You heard Miss Mehta told you that Miss Levin looked sleepy. She had bloodshot eyes and she tripped over her words. It is Miss Levin that Miss Mehta was worried about. Then we have Miss Mehta, the only witness who wasn't drinking that night. Miss Mehta was at Miss Marks' table 8 to 10 times, and in these 8 to 10 times, Miss Marks did not lose coordination. Her eyes were not bloodshot or unfocused, and her speech was not slurred, and her words made sense. Even as they were leaving, Miss Marks did not stumble on a narrow staircase, and she sounded sober. Third, after leaving the bar, Miss Marks made the decision to drive. And that's why her life stopped. You heard Miss Levin saying that she didn't feel safe in the car with Miss Marks, and she begged her best friend to get in an Uber with her. But again and again, Miss Marks said she was fine. Miss Levin admitted on the stand that when Miss Marks gave herself the sobriety test, Miss Marks wasn't as drunk as she had expected. Again and again, Miss Marks responded that she was fine. And her life stopped because of that final decision. Because of Miss Marks' 3 decisions, the plaintiffs have failed to meet their burden by a preponderance of evidence. And this is why the defense asks you to look at something called an affirmative defense. That Miss Marks' death was caused by her own decisions. Members of the jury, I know this is hard. Miss Marks was young. She made mistakes just like you and I did. But unlike us, Miss Marks' life stopped because of her 3 decisions to go big. And she never went home. Because of these 3 decisions, find Miss Mehta not liable.
Thank you. Rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. Go big or go home. Members of the jury, did she tell you what that meant? Does it mean that Jessica was drinking? Yes. Does it mean that she was intoxicated? Yes. Does it mean that she wasn't displaying the signs? Now, members of the jury, I want to take a closer look at the events that night. What happened over the course of those 3 hours? All the drinks they ordered from 9:10 to 11:32, but I want us to focus on those last 3 images. When Jessica Marks was acting the way she was in the video, she was slurring her words, her posture was bad, she almost dropped her drink. A reasonable person could see she was intoxicated. And Sunny Mehta was up there in less than 20 to 30 minutes from when that video was taken. And yet they still want you to believe that nobody saw the signs. Members of the jury, that doesn't make sense. I want to think about who would have seen the signs that night. Members of the jury, Morgan Levin was with Jessica the entire night for 3 hours straight. Sunny Mehta saw Jessica 8 to 10 times for a minute each. That's 8 to 10 minutes. Members of the jury, in today's case, it doesn't matter when she used a fake ID. What matters is, was she obviously intoxicated? And did the defendant serve to her? And today the answer is yes. After she was slurring her words in that video, she got another shot. Her life stopped because they never stopped serving. That's why we ask you find the defendant liable for Jessica Marks's wrongful death. Thank you.
Thank you. Judges, at this time, please fill out your ballots and click submit. I just ask that you stay on, and I'll give us the go ahead once all the ballots are in, and then we'll give brief comments.